in Tunis. We're going to stay there, though, and speak to political analyst Youssef Cherif. Thank you for joining us here on France 24.
Thank you.
Your office is not very far from where one of those attacks happened. Did you hear it?
No, because and that shows that the explosion was not very big. And actually, if you see the traces of the attack, it's mainly it did kill, of course, someone and injured a few people, but there was no big deflagration on the ground, and so not people who were not in the immediate place of the attack did not really hear it. And that's, as Father was saying, it's very similar to the attack that happened in October last year in the Habib Bourguiba Avenue.
Makeshift devices, what does that tell you?
Sorry?
What does it tell you, the fact that the impact of the blasts was limited in scope?
Well, I think it shows that the group that probably did this attack and the other attack in the police station is strong enough to do a coordinated attack, because now most people think it's a coordinated attack, but they don't have enough military material to do something big or to stage spectacular attacks. This says that at least in the last 3 years, this reminds us that at least in the last 3 years there was an improving security situation in the country, and that at least until now we haven't seen the spectacular attacks we've seen in 2015 or early 2016.
What are the possible suspected groups that could be behind this?
I mean, until now, most of the attacks that took place in Tunisia for the last 6 years were either the blame was either on ISIS or on Al Qaeda, although some of them went without any claim of responsibility. So usually these are the two groups that are accused. But again, I mean, when you see the kind of attacks that happened, it shows you that the groups, at least the local groups that organized these attacks, do not have the capabilities that some of their peers have in places like Egypt or Libya or elsewhere.
Youssef Cherif, Tunisia, of course, the nation that spawned the Arab Spring with those democratic elections that we were talking about earlier back in 2014. At the same time, a huge exporter a few years back of jihadists to Syria and Iraq. People were saying, oh, it's a ticking time bomb. Those people are going to come back. But as you've just pointed out, the security situation has improved. What do you make of it all?
I mean, of course, that problem will always be around. That fear of more attacks will always be around. What you just mentioned, the fact that many Tunisians went to fight in Syria and Iraq, means that there is a risk in the future. But frankly, when we're on the ground, we do not see that risk every day. And it is not, I mean, be it the attacks that happened today or what happened over the last 2 years shows that, yes, that threat is there, yes, the risk is there, but it's not necessarily impacting Tunisia, and it's not necessarily impacting life in Tunisia, and the security situation is more or less under control.
The big attacks that people here remember are the ones on the Bardo Museum, the one at the beach, at the resort that targeted foreign tourists in Sousse, in Djerba, excuse me. The question is
in Sousse, actually.
Sousse, excuse me. Yes, thank you. Youssef Cherif, now you're seeing again more limited in scope, but also you're wondering why they're targeting more security services.
Mm-hmm. So the attacks of Bardo and Sousse were clearly targeting tourists. And as far as I remember, they are the only ones that targeted tourists 100%. And they succeeded, actually. They succeeded in, the groups that perpetrated these attacks succeeded in taking down the tourism sector in Tunisia and pushing Tunisia towards one of its harshest economic crises. But then before that and after that, most of the attacks targeted either the police or the military. So not tourists and not civilians, the police and the military. So the attacks we've seen today are part of the same trend that target specifically police and the army, where civilian casualties are very limited. And this is, many people think this is a long-term strategy by these groups who try not to alienate the civilian population by targeting only the police and the army, whom they say they are part of the authoritarian system that is against Islam, etc., etc. And so here I think we're in the continuation of this same trend, but because these actions are so isolated and because they are, I mean, they're not really doing much. They're not necessarily affecting. They're not changing the situation in the country. However, one very important part about tourism. Tourists usually do not look at these details. They won't see that there is a limited number of casualties, etc., etc. They will only hear that there was an attack, and so many will think twice about coming to Tunisia, which is why many people, as Father was just mentioning, many people are worried that this may affect the economic situation in the country, and also because you talked about elections. Tunisia is going towards its third round of free and fair elections since the revolution, but many people recently have been saying that we need to postpone these elections. So these kind of attacks may encourage people who are on the side of postponing the elections. It may encourage them to say that the security situation is not ready for elections, and we will hear more and more voices calling for a postponement of the election, which is, I think, would be a very dangerous thing to do.
Yeah, because Youssef Cherif, this news that's coming in of the country's first democratically elected president falling ill for the second time inside of a week, also a reminder of how far Tunisia has come. How would you say, going into that election cycle, its institutions are doing?
So for the moment, the institutions are working. The institution that organizes elections, it has been put in place. It is ready, and the parliament is working. A lot of institutions are in place. But there is one institution, one major and capital institution that has not been established, which is the Constitutional Court. And so today, as the president is in hospital, we don't know much about his health and about his whereabouts. So most people are now thinking, what happens if he cannot return to the presidency? I mean, as you said, it's the second time that he's admitted in hospital. He's 92 years old. So anything can happen, and there is no constitutional court to say exactly who would replace him, what will happen when it comes to the election, etc., etc. And now there is, I heard there is an emergency meeting at the parliament, maybe to discuss some of these points, but again, there is limited communication coming from that side. And so yes, I mean, the fact that there is no constitutional court puts the democratic transition somewhat in a situation that is not as good as one would expect, be it a few months before the elections or in the face of situations such as this one where the president is in hospital.
Youssef Cherif, many thanks for joining us live there from Tunis.